Right, thanks everyone for joining January's Electrical Safety Community Monthly Call. So just a brief introduction for those that weren't on last time. So we had our first kickoff session in December. Good way to end the year. And so the reason, I suppose, just a bit of an introduction was we had our Electrical Safety and Reliability Conference in October in Washington last year. There was 2 days of really good engagement and collaboration. A lot of people were sharing ideas and experiences. There was so much drive and enthusiasm in the room for people to try and push the needle on electrical safety and make things better and safer and more efficient. And then the conference ended, typically as they do. And one of the, I suppose, frustrations from our side was everyone's so engaged when they're there in that forum, when they're freed up from their operational roles. And then they go back to firefighting, and although they want to do the right thing and keep things going, often in an operational environment, it's quite busy and it doesn't allow you to do that. So that's kind of the problem that we had, and in many discussions with people that are on this call, it was a case of a lot of people want to keep it going, and how do we do that? Which is why we came up with the idea of doing this, and the purpose was to take that collaboration and the sharing of ideas and all that drive and try to identify some key themes which came from both the topics from the conference and then also a lot of the Q&A, the general discussions that we were having in the networking periods, and then also at the end of the conference we had a lessons learned discussion, what people were going to key themes people were going to take away, which kind of gave us some key direction on what are the key themes in industry around electrical safety. We then worked together with a steering committee who you'll be introduced to soon to agree some, I suppose, tangible outcomes, discuss how we share standards and collaborate and learn from each other's experiences to try and align some electrical safety good practices. So just so you know, everyone that's registered will get a recording sent after the call. There'll be a post-call survey, again, just to make sure we're working on the right things and trying to get your inputs and involvement. Make use of the chat or raise your hands. After each work stream, we'll be having a little bit of Q&A just to discuss the points. So please get involved. And after each session, we will share the slides and any content that we discussed in there as well. So how we wanted the sessions to run, this is for each one. We're going to have an hour's call. The steering committee are going to present the work streams. But on this one, we're going to have a quick recap for those that weren't on. And then what we're asking for on each session is, so it's not just us talking and presenting, what we do in our work environment. We're asking for you guys, for volunteers in the community, to present your inputs into the respective work streams to where they fit, to promote collaboration and give us an opportunity to learn as well. So if you've got any good practice, any bad practice, or things you might have done and maybe haven't worked out, it's maybe good to share those so others don't make the same mistakes possibly down the line. And we'll be opening up to the community to then discuss and ask any questions on each point. The intention will be to review this each month, which is why we're having the monthly calls. We'll run it once a month, and then the intention is to have an in-person review, like an alignment meeting in person in the 6-month point, so around April or May time in the US somewhere, which we'll start looking at and planning soon. The steering group will own the work streams, and then our kind of expectation is then for us and the community, so everyone on this call, to work on your own actions relevant to these work streams back in your work environment, and then give us some feedback. Are these the key themes? Are they the right things that we're working on? And what are you doing? What works for you or what doesn't work for you? And please get involved. Let us know, and we'll get you involved on each session to maybe present or show what you do. And then the ideal situation is going to be 12 months from the conference. So in 2026, we're going to have an electrical safety conference around October again, which will be 12 months from the last one. And it'll just be really good to maybe have a session where we reflect on where we were last year and where we are now 12 months on. We're not going to change the world in 12 months, but it'd be really good to just have some positive outcomes from what we've been working on from a collaboration perspective. So we'll not go over everyone, but essentially this is the committee who's committed their time to steer the work streams and drive this forward. It's likely to evolve, grow, and change as we go through time, but we've got a lot of good persons on here who we've got bringing different experiences and different insights into what we're doing. And like I said, these guys are going to be owning the work streams and pushing them forward and supporting you guys. So I guess we'll jump straight in then. So work stream one, for those that weren't on, was discussing commissioning, transition, and turnover. This was quite a hot topic when we reviewed it at the conference. So I'll now pass you over to Wayne and Alan just to go through a quick recap, and then we were going to present some stuff on this.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Yeah, for the turnover to operations piece was something that was discussed, as Dan mentioned, and it's often something that gets kind of overlooked. Right, we're in a hurry to finish construction, get commissioning complete, and then it's just all right. Here you go, operations. It's your bag. So what are all the little things that have to do leading up to that to make that a successful turnover? So that's what I want to talk about today. So that the action 1.2 there is right coming up with a standardized turnover document package to operations, right? So we're not going to talk about, it'll include lockout, tagout, arc flash, and all that, but this is a bit more comprehensive. So we put together this kind of just a generic template, but with a bunch of details. So I'll share my screen. All right, Dan, can you guys see this?
Yep. Everyone got that?
Yep.
Do you see the checklist of the spreadsheet?
Yeah, we see it, Alan.
Okay, cool. So I went to put this together as kind of a checklist for operations and then some other things like security, compliance, IT network, and of course EHS. So I kind of just broke up in different tabs, and this is meant to just be a template that we can share with everybody. And this is something similar that I use with our turnover commission ops, and we tailor it specifically to each project. And typically, this project, each these spreadsheets will get expanded, right? I say this is an 80% solution, right? Under like review commissioning scripts. Okay, which ones, you can even break this down into sub steps and assign each operations person. All right, you're going to review the chiller script. You're going to review the UPS script, right? So that becomes so it's just a one-stop shop of tracking all these things. Yeah, so it starts in the design, reviewing the drawings, air permits, everything that's got to happen during construction with commissioning, and there's EPMS, BMS. There's the operational readiness, right? Staffing requirements, fueling contracts. Make sure you've got your staff hired, and if you don't have everybody fully hired up, like what's the plan to get them hired and get them trained up, right? Do you need support from another site, which I typically see out there? Developing EOPS, SOPs, right? You could break this down, right, into multiple subcategories and assign each individual SOP to an operations person, right, within here. The training plan, setting up your LMS, pager duty, site emergency plan, right? All these things that you ensure that you're ready to execute day one, right? Janitorial contracts, garbage contracts, all right? And then some more specifics here in the commissioning, all right? They're verifying level 3 checks, ops being present for all the pre-energization inspections prior to startup, witnessing all the AHJ testing, obviously participate in level 4, level 5. Then big one is reviewing the coordination study and verified settings after IST, after the permit, and verify the permanent arc flash labels installed. Right, we want to make sure we have those permanent ones installed and no construction temporary ones, and that all the breaker settings, if we had to adjust to do anything during IST and finalize them, we want to make sure that the coordination study matches what's being turned over to operation. Along with that, a review of all the other outstanding issues with the CXA and construction after IST. Something that often gets a little bit different depending on which jurisdiction, which building. If you've got multiple tenants or a single tenant, is that power utility billing handover, right? Who's paying the bills? Is the GC along with water, right? Who's paying the water bill during construction, and then once you turn over to operations, who's now paying those bills, right? Because it's often not one and the same during those phases. Punch list walkthrough, right? Just kind of close out training, equipment training, lessons learned meeting with the CXA and construction. That's huge. There's because that's going to apply to then future phases if you're building a multi-phase building. Down here there's some of these miscellaneous things like plants and kitchen supplies and coffee stock, your snacks, all that stuff. I joke with some of our other sites. I go, "Oh, have you added your ice cream, the ice cream freezer on there, right?" Because everybody seems to like having an ice cream freezer at Stack here. So, but it's down to those things. The idea is that when you walk into this building day one to operate it, it's ready because the rest of the building's probably under construction, but and then you've got some overlap there, but you want to make sure you're 100% ready. You're ready to respond to any type of alarm. All your building is established and set up. You don't want to be chasing it 6 months, into it, right? So this will, things like this, putting the forward thinking ahead and modify the checklist to tailor to your individual project. So on the security side of things, right, it's really just reviewing drawings, submittals, things like establishing an access list, verifying your camera views, staffing requirements, new hire requirements, contractor training, right? What's it take to get a contractor on board? Similarly with IT network, right? You can't do anything without your network. Make sure you've got all your requirements, you've got all your hardware, you've got all your drawings, everything's visible, all your agreements, your WAP coverage. And then EHS. So in here, right? So we got air permit, which gets mentioned in one of the other tabs. But this is meant to then be driven mostly by whoever your safety person that's going to be in charge of safety for operations, right? So we have a department for safety just for construction and just for operations. So this is more focused on, all right, are they ready for operations, right? So all your emergency response plans, hearing protection, all OSHA employment posters, PPE, noise map, all your training, making sure that's all done, and then your readiness, right? So like things like spill kits, AEDs, all your lockout tagout equipment, make sure that's all there and ready. So this isn't meant to be like it's not a perfect checklist, but I think it's a good starting point for anybody that's looking to do this. And I encourage everyone to evaluate where your turnover process is. So I fly out to a site because I'm involved with commissioning, and I'm there just prior to IST, and I'm there for IST. But prior to IST, I sit down with operations, I sit down with all these different groups, and we go through a checklist and make sure, hey, where are we outstanding? What needs to be done? What help? Do you understand what this line item says? And do you understand? Hey, why is it late? All right, what's the mitigation plan? What's our plan to catch up? And we do that now for every building that we turn over, especially that first phase of the project, to make sure that we're 100% ready, right? We recognize we had some gaps in some of these things not getting done, and that our process wasn't robust enough. So we made some changes and came up with a very detailed list. And then as parameters change throughout the project and requirements might change, then the first thing is update the checklist, right, to make sure that we're going to capture that and be ready. So it's a really good tool to just hold everybody accountable to make sure, and then ultimately it's the support operations to make sure they're ready day one.
Yeah, totally agree. No, it's really good. And again, people are going to be at different levels of maturity. So it's just a really good point for discussion. If other people, and I think it's already been asked, if anyone else is actively uses a commissioning checklist or a handover to operations checklist, if anyone was captured, if there's anything missing, if you think actually this would be quite good for you to have on there as well, please, this is two-way. So Alan's just presented what he has. If anyone on the call has got any input and thinks actually you should have that on, or this would really help you out, feel free, put it in the chat, or if you want to speak, if you just raise your hand in Zoom and Ben can unmute your mic and you can have a bit of dialogue with Alan. If anyone's got any input. One thing that has been just mentioned there, Alan, is just, again, I think it was from, just looking through the chat, I think it was Mike Hittle. It made the clear, like a really good statement, really, of just saying that when you're troubleshooting or you're in a troubleshooting situation, it's really valuable to know that one time in the past the system functioned as intended, which is a a really good reason of having this, to say that at this point in time, it was an established benchmark. So
Yeah, and
it's
I
definitely
push
something to work on.
operations to make sure they get all their screenshots, that we're doing during commissioning, because just even getting up to 50% load in the building, it might not be it might be a year before you're actually see that level of load in the building. So grabbing those screenshots, grabbing the pictures of what the equipment looks like beforehand. So we push that operations is there for every pre-energization inspection, because they're the ones that can own it. They're the ones that define, does it meet the standard, right?
Definitely.
So
There's been a question asked, but I think this is going to vary by locality. With I think obviously it depends where in the world you are, I guess. So this would definitely be a pertinent question for UK and Europe. But Philip Ross has asked, whose electrical safety rules are you following at the various stages of the commissioning process, and is it defined in your employer requirements?
Yeah, that's a good question. Big question. So, that Dan kind of alluded to, it's definitely different project to project, jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Some electrical contractors have it a little bit different lockout tagout process. And ultimately, as long as everyone understands that process, everybody buys into it in the initial project kickoff. Trying to change that during the project can be cumbersome and difficult. But if it needs to change for safety's sake, then yeah, absolutely change it. But I've seen where all of a sudden we change the rules of the game, lockout tag out in the middle of a project, and and everyone's getting mad at each other, right? Um, so definitely, it's definitely looking at your owner requirements. So different owner requirements have different QA QC requirements, electrical safety, whether it's down to QA QC meetings, to what's required for pre-energization inspection, right? That pre-energization inspection is becoming more and more critical, because that's your last stop to prevent an arc flash. We talked about that at the conference, right? How many people have seen arc flashes upon initial energization? So I think there needs to be a big movement, and that's something I got out of, kind of coming up and thinking about all that data that's out there. Is that I'm pushing for the culture in every site that the goal is zero arc flash upon initial energization, right? So what are we going to do to get there? And do we have the right expertise? Do we have the people that are doing inspections? Do they have the right training? So I think it's very important to realize, what are all the rules that are out there? What, obviously following NETA standards and all that, and that's got to get packaged together into your QA plan, right? Whether that's dictated by the owner or it's the GC that submits the QA plan and then the owner has buy-in to that, right? But I would strongly suggest that anyone involved in that process takes that QA QC plan and provides input to it to make it as detailed as possible, right? To eliminate any kind of any doubt. Right. These are when we're having down to the details of this is when we're having meetings, right? Sometimes these things also include in the commissioning plan, right? We're gonna have bi-weekly meetings to cover issues, or hey, here's the process. How 4 days prior to energization, all the paperwork's gonna get reviewed. That's your deadline, 4 days. And then, within 24 hours of energization, you do your final pre-energization inspection, right? So setting up those, maybe it's 36, maybe it's more appropriate for 36 hours for your site, right? But, come up with hard and fast rules right off the get-go and say, this is our process. This is how we're going to do it each and every time. And so that they make sure that everybody understands that process, knows it, put it in the graphic, put it up on the wall in the construction trailer, put it on the hallway, outside the electric room. So
Yeah, that
yeah, that was a
communication
good
piece
question,
comes
Phil.
up at every point, doesn't it? Throughout the whole process. It's so important just to make sure that
Yeah,
everything
it's
is
one thing to
communicated.
establish the rules, but it's another thing to communicate and enforce them. I
Yeah.
think that's because you've got every day, in this industry, the average level of experience of the person out there in the field doing this work is going down, right? Because we can't put people into the industry fast enough.
Yes, perfect. Ben, have we got time for one more?
Yeah, definitely. Do you want me to read it out?
Yeah, it's dropped off mine.
Yeah, sure. This is from Sarah, so thank you for this, Sarah. With Microsoft Engagement, are you linking to the work that was done in the ArtFlash playbook recently created, as it was a great resource, Alan?
I have not seen that Arc Flash playbook. I'd love to see it if that's something Microsoft is sharing.
Suppose that's a question for us to take away, Ben.
Yeah, for
This
definitely.
may
I'll make a note of that.
maybe we if somebody wants to share that, and then we could even present that next month and say, hey, somebody mentioned the ArcFlash playbook, and here's the meat and potatoes out of it. Here's something a resource that you could use. And
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, we can take that away and ask that question. I think that's the whole point in this, isn't it? It's that collaboration piece, and I think because we're all together, and there's no I suppose IP
yeah,
in safety. We're all just trying to do the right thing, aren't we? So anything that helps there
absolutely.
is yeah, definitely.
Good stuff. Something from
Yeah.
your side, Matt?
I think I have an early version of it. I could share it with you to make sure, just want to make sure it's the final before we discuss it further.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we'll take it away before and bring it into our committee meeting, obviously before the next month's meeting.
I'll get the I can't find the hand here in Zoom, but Teams user, but I will get the most recent version of the playbook and I'll share that with everyone.
Chad's the man. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad.
Yeah.
Okay. So work stream 2, again, just a unified energy control plan, lockout and tagout. And this is massive and wide. So it's such a big area, but again, such an important piece of electrical safety and what goes on. So I'll hand you over to Wayne to have a recap and then talk through the piece that he was going to share today.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining. Appreciate you taking your time for this important call, right? What we discuss here, let's do our due diligence and make sure that we're filtering it down to the folks that need it the most, right? Like boots on the ground. So one of the items we wanted to talk about here in this second item here was using AI tools for doing our construction, commissioning, electrical safety. And what we had here on our program last year was we saw a rate increase with our electrical events, near misses. And we decided to do a global blitz on all of our programs, our electrical safety programs with construction. So we utilized or leveraged, I should say, AI tools that we have here, obviously using Gemini and Notebook LM, which are our products, which are great tools, but we're not here to say whose AI tool is better than the others. I wanted to take a moment and kind of walk through how we approached using AI. And, a little background with that again is we saw an increase in our events, and we decided to look at our general contractors, go to our general contractors and our electrical trade partners and ask them for their energy control plans. So they would feed us their ECPs, and we took tools like Gemini and Notebook LM and fed it in there, and we did side-by-side comparisons with our own programmatic single source of truth. Here at Google, we call that Appendix A, which again is our electrical safety commissioning program for construction. That's our single source of truth. So we wanted to do that comparison analysis, and then we were able to take these tools and feed it back to our general contractors and our electrical contractors. And what they did was they were able to take the findings from these and bolster their programs even better, right? Knowing that 2026, 2027, the increase to the industry with building data centers is going to grow exponentially as we scale. We're moving so fast in this industry. We needed to make sure that our programs were aligned, number one, and the best that they could be, right? So I wanted to walk through how we looked at some of these items. So I'll start off with Gemini. And can everyone see my screen?
Yep. On Gemini, yes.
Okay, perfect. So in Gemini, or just like any other AI software tool, you get a chat box here. And what's important is how you frame out what you're looking for, right? So here I basically said, hey, we want to do energy control plans, gap analysis. So you put your source in. Here we have two sources. One is our Appendix A, and then the other is a gap analysis from one of our energy control plans. So we took that gap analysis and we said, okay, here's what we need, put it in, and then just say, let me see what you can come up with. And obviously, it's so fast what AI can do for us. It can measure and using one source as its single source of truth, identify these gaps in programs. So we're able to come up with these things and then present them back to our GCs and ECs. And then we did analysis for all of our project sites. We even did a template where we did audits on our project sites as well. So we approached it again in two phases. One was measuring their ECP, and then phase two was basically doing an audit to the site to verify that they were executing according to what their program says. Another tool we used was Notebook LM, a great tool for helping you understand what you can and can't do, create presentations, create videos and all kinds of things. And again, just like anything else, it's all about putting your sources in there. So for example, if you have a blank template book here with Notebook LM, I'm going to add a source, and let me just quickly find a source, which here is our single source of truth for commissioning. So I'm just going to grab that and drop that in here and make that a source. So now it becomes a source. And what you can do with that is, as you create these notebooks, you'll get all of these other sources open. Then you can now take that, and as a source, you can select what source you want, what source you don't want, and then say, okay, I want to mind map a source, and it will come up with those mind maps. And this is how quickly it can do that. So it took the source that I put in there, which was our Appendix A, and it quickly came out with this, and it says, here's what your temp power, you're looking at your plan in 4 basic structures. And let me go back to here. And it just breaks it on down even further. Now that is all for, you can do videos, you can do audio, slide decks, flashcards, reports, quizzes, all kinds of neat little things from Notebook LM. But the point to all of this was the fact that what it gave us, right? It gave us the opportunity to dig deep in, raise that hood, look under the hood, and verify everything was ticking around just like an engine should. Again, we were able to say, our GC, general contractor, electrical contractor, and, here's an item where we want to do better, do more, do better, and provide those findings directly to them. Obviously, with AI, you want to verify everything you're doing. So that does take some time. You just can't rely that AI will get everything right exactly the way it should be, because it's still learning, but it's a great tool, and leveraging off of that is something that we're all doing in what we do here, environmental health and safety. So these were great resources for us. I thought it would be a great resource, and just wanted to kind of give a step-by-step on how we did that here. And I am putting together a kind of presentation for that, and we'll supply that to Scanware at some point, just kind of going through those steps of what we used again. And with that, are there questions?
None that I can see at the moment, but if anyone's got any questions, we can revisit them later on as well, Wayne.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, something has just come in from Michael. The effort put forth in creation of Lotto Plan is a valuable part of the process, as it makes one think it through. I have concerns about humans following a checklist. I'm not sure if this is in relation to this one, but Michael, feel free to speak. I will unmute you now.
That sounds like it's going to go back to Alan. Michael, if you're talking, your hand's muted. Your mic's muted.
Yeah, I'll jump in.
Can you hear me?
Oh, Good.
Yeah, we've got you, Mike. Yeah.
As I was reading through this, when I saw this digital lockout tagout, and I've seen initiatives where they talk about that. Maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but it's kind of like creating all these processes that they're pulling out like playbooks. And I just saying I have a concern when the people involved are not actually sitting down and developing. I don't think much effort is put in when they pull these, playbooks out to do action. So I guess I was trying to put in there that the actual effort in its creation makes the people involved actually think it through. And in my experience has been a good solid thing to set you up for success when you execute. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think actually when we cover work stream, I think it's work stream 3. One of the points for discussion is like the digital lockout tagout systems, for trying to, I suppose, have uniformity. So and we haven't got much to discuss on that one, to be fair, but it's one that we're going to kind of keep coming back to. So Mike, to be honest with you, it'd be quite good maybe to bring you in. So what we want to do at some point was have some people maybe present what they've done, because obviously we don't want to promote any particular providers, because we're not here for a commercial side, we're here for electrical safety. So it'll be good. What we were looking to do down the line was maybe discuss some of the different digital tools that people have used in terms of lockout and tagout, and then maybe some of their benefits and limitations. But I think on the other side of the fence, I'm kind of with you. I prefer to plan out, look at it, and do that verification piece, which I'm not saying doesn't happen with the output from a digital lockout tagout system, but I haven't used it firsthand. So I think it would probably be really good to have someone like you involved in that to kind of come across from the other side of that, maybe to challenge it as we discuss it. So really happy with your points. I think it would probably be good just to bring you in for that piece on workstream 3 when we cover it, either next month or the month after. Give us time to look at it together, if that's okay. Was there any other things that came in there, Ben?
Yes. Over to you, Mike.
I'm good.
Oh, all good. Thank you, Mike. Just one more point here from Aidan, that they find a formal onboarding day gets great feedback and helps everyone focus.
Yeah, agreed with that. Totally agree.
Yeah, I think we can keep moving.
Okey-doke. So workstream 3, which covered arc flash and electrical hazard management. So I'll hand this one over to, I think we got Jimmy on. Again, just to talk through I suppose just a quick recap on it and why we chose it. I don't think we've got anything to present on this. We were going to have David Leslie presenting a temporary arc flash label. So one of the things was keeping our arc flash labeling up to date as we go through the project, which is probably likely to change from first design when it's first modeled to then when the installation is done. The relay type might change, or the cable lengths might change. So you might have a change of impedance, or you might not be able to put the right values in that you modeled because you might have chose a different relay type. So a good example that David put forward was using temporary labels, and they had a template, and we're going to talk around how they did that. But unfortunately, they couldn't make it this month, so they're going to look to present that in February. So if I'll just hand over to Jimmy, and if you can just give us a quick recap on why we're looking at this and things that we're going to talk through in future. And then if we have any questions, great. And if not, we'll move on to workstream 4.
Yeah, thanks, Dane. Rick George and myself are leading this effort on this part. As Dan said, looking at temporary arc flash labels. Why? Well, in construction phase, one lines can change, how temp power is set up can change. And then as we get to more permanent power solutions, obviously they're more set in stone. So that's kind of why we're looking at this from the life cycle approach. Temporary arc flash labels are used at some of the sites that I visited in my 13 years in the data center industry, but some do not use them. So trying to get something out there for a standardized approach that can be a good lesson learned and share. Obviously, in this work stream, we can see other things as well coming into play and open for feedback on what you all would like to see out of this to help the industry move forward.
Yeah. So yeah, that's why it was chosen. That's why we were looking at it. Obviously, we discussed it last time, opening it up to the community. I think pretty much everyone agreed that it's quite an important piece to make sure that we get right, and an area that is open to risk as the project evolves from the original design, installation, construction, installation, into commission, and then handover. It's liable to change multiple times through there. So quite an important piece. Do we have any questions on that? And if there's not, what we will, if anyone wants to have any inputs into that for future sessions, obviously we've had some volunteers like through David, Leslie, and others. If you've got anything, good practices, bad practices, things they may have seen and done relevant to that work stream, let us know. Either email us afterwards, drop it in the chat, or in the follow-up questionnaire. I think we've got a question on there. So if you anything to add or where you can participate in that, yeah, please come forward. Have we had any questions relevant to that, Ben?
No, I think we can keep moving. If we do, we can circle back.
No, it's fine. I'm just conscious that we've got people presenting. So on work stream 4, which is the final work stream, again, they're all quite wide topics. We're looking at, again, a massive one, contractor and competency management. So in this topic, I'll hand you over to Chad and Matt just to recap on why this has been chosen, what the risks are, and obviously what the initial top level actions are. And then we've got the Data Center Safety Council willing to share something on this topic.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, so Workstream 4 is all about competency management, contractor management, and really the why. I think we've discussed a lot of that, alluded to it earlier, right? Alan said that every day the experience level goes down in the data center industry. New workers are coming on board all the time. Portfolios continue to expand rapidly, right? So ensuring that we have workers out there that have the right skill set to do the work that's being asked of them, right? We know electrical work is high risk work. There's no question about it. And we want to make sure that everyone out there has the same basic level of competency to do so. I think sometimes in the field, when you ask people about training, you ask people if they are trained, the answer is usually yes. And that's kind of where sometimes they want it to stop, right? The conversation. And the next question should be how, and then the final question should always be show me, right? Show me the process that has been taken to train these individuals up to the level of competency and what's involved in that. So there's a lot more to it than just an online module, right? It has to be more in depth than that, hands-on practical activities, actually demonstrating competency. We want to steer away from the watch PowerPoint and say everything's good and maybe take a test. That's not sufficient for the risk level of work that we're asking folks to do. I'll hand it over to Matt to talk about some of the actions.
Yeah, thanks, Chad. One of the big things, leaning on what was discussed earlier with Chad, is a lot of times in the construction environment, whenever you ask someone if they're trained, it's usually a specific, are you NFPA 70E trained? And there's a lot more to it. Basically, the expectation is that you're compliant and what your expectations are. Earlier, it was alluded to that you should have an electrical safety plan, or that those items should already be in place. So what you're training to is the agreed upon electrical safety requirements and how you're going to qualify. And those should be established early on, not as you go. We talked about basically phases of training, and you have before construction starts. You want to make sure you build a continuous improvement program and training program, but it also has to be a living document, because sometimes you're going to end up learning from experience, and some of those are other sites, not just yours. Keeping track of incidents or near misses and integrating those into your training program. And starting off with your leadership. A lot of times we kind of train from the bottom up. but who is making sure that your electrical trades are doing what is expected properly. You want to make sure the guys who are observing them and doing the audits and the annual verifications of competency is also proper. So like your electrical safety SMEs, energy marshals, and your quality or your qualified electrical worker program. And you want to make sure that your training isn't just on basic electrical safety, but also focusing on build phases. For example, before you start commissioning, your safety is based more on mechanical fixtures and avoiding other items that could be energized. But as you go into commissioning, it gets more and more dangerous as you venture into it. And it can't be the same training all the way through all phases. And then we discussed that you want to make sure that both safety is involved, but it's led by folks who are actually SMEs. I think it was discussed earlier, like with the lockout tagout program. The folks that are going to be involved should be heavily engaged in creating that process so they're not just doing what they're told. They actually have buy-in to what the expectations are and everybody understands it. But that's pretty much the idea behind making sure everybody's trained properly. But the final step is ensuring your vendors and your subs are also being held accountable for the same standards. A lot of times on some of these sites, as you start getting real close to the end, some of the third parties that come in to help with commissioning or do energization checks or even vendors sometimes may slip through the cracks. We want to make sure everybody is verified against a known standard before we cut them loose, or at least have backup to ensure there's levels of safety if they aren't going to be trained to that level. And that's pretty much it with what we're going for. I would like to look at, I come from the operations side originally, so a lot of the way I train comes from operations back to construction. Found it was easier if I went with a more robust training program, and then whittle stuff out vice trying to build on stuff. But I think that's why we really like to see what the presenters have today, and that's it for me.
No, thank you. So yeah, we'll hand you over to the Data Center Safety Council to present some stuff.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's see here.
Hope it works, Janine.
Yeah, no pressure. There we go. You all can see my screen?
Okay?
Yeah. So I think thanks for having us present on this. And I think this kind of does a nice play from Project 4 that Chad and Matt just kind of explained. And really in 2024, this is when we took this on as one of our first projects. Maybe this will load here. There we go. All right. And so one of the original problem statements that, I think you all are generally hearing about is there's a lot of different ARC Flash NFPA certification courses that are currently available online or in person. These courses are inconsistent in their curriculum length and subject matter depth, and usually do not address data center specific situations, which result in a lack of consistency in the knowledge of the individuals with the certification. So this was our large problem statement that we really sought to dive into. And what I have here on the screen is kind of our step-by-step process, and I'll kind of go through where we ended up. But really, we wanted to dive in and do a gap analysis of what are some baseline electrical training requirements. So going through all the programs, pulling out what was some of the best topics that should be incorporated into trainings. We then evaluated, and we're starting to look at partners, and I will kind of take it back of where we ended up with the project here in a slide, but the whole goal was to whether or not we wanted to further develop an actual criteria and curriculum that was going to be considered the state gold standard for NFPA 70E training. Really, in the implementation part, we started to more look towards the white paper that you all have probably seen. And if you haven't, that's on our online website. But we wanted to, let me take a step back. We first started defining these different groups of workers. And I know, Matt, you were just talking about construction and operations. Really, when we took on this project, it was an operations focus only. So I think now playing into Project 4, there's lots of opportunity to now bring into the construction side of things. And so when we were looking at this, we came up with 3 different groups of workers and employees that are going to be looked at for different types of training, because it's not all equal. So one, you have the qualified worker, NFPA 70E, greater than 50 volts. Maybe some of these workers have had some sort of training. There's no consistency in that training. And they probably or potentially do not have any data center experience. We then have another group, which is the qualified electricians. And some of these potentially or probably do not have data experience. And then lastly, other employees in the operations environment that are working on less than 50 volts. And perhaps this would just be an awareness training only. And when I say covered in Project 1, this was the Certus training that has been released for kind of that overall baseline health and safety training that folks are welcome to check out. And that training was really targeted for this group. So in this specific project, we wanted to make a call out in the paper of what does the electrical training look like for this qualified worker group. So some of the things that we toyed around in the paper, we don't really make a specific training that should be done exactly, but really the learning objectives that should be tackled in what a good training would look like. Perhaps the format would be a hybrid training. Some of the ones we've seen toyed around, whether it's 8 hours and there's a card of completion, some hands-on training that's also done with that. All those call-outs that would be good potential training modules. And the training topics in general that we called out, an introduction to NFPA 70E and arc flash, electrical hazard identification, arc flash hazards, personal protective equipment, electrically safe working conditions, risk assessments and methods, arc flash analysis and warnings, lockout tagout training, training overall, and then energized electrical work. And of course, this would exclude any sort of site-specific training and verification, which I think would be employer-specific of what they're going to implement on their own. So in this, process, like I said, we ended up coming out with a white paper, really of the call-outs of those topics that should be included. There was a lot of comparison of commercial offerings, Certus, ClickSafety. There's a ton of other ones. We try to do our own little high-level gap analysis. I think with this white paper, that the future outcomes that really I think should be looked at next is, especially with this group and the global perspective, is having more of that global gap assessment and review done, not just in this group where we had predominantly United States folks participating. And then perhaps, is there an opportunity for training providers to submit their courses for, DCSC approval, or perhaps in this working group propelling on that, or an endorsement opportunity for folks to kind of take a look at and go from there. So really, that's all I have for kind of the high-level project, where we ended up, that white paper, again, talking about those topics that should be included in a good training. Great opportunity, I think, for what I said Matt and Chad just presented on, also including that scope of construction, and hopefully making that call out of the different types of workers groups that should be focused on, and the different types of trainings that should be accepted for them is a good start to continue this work on. And with that, I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Yeah, and we've had the white paper posted in the chat as well, or the link to the website. So if anybody wants to look into that further, that is there. And obviously we've got the guys from the Data Center Safety Council on the committee. So if you want any further information, or if you want to go into it a little bit further, just let us know. Is there any questions come up on that, Ben?
There's one here. So on the last topic, a big challenge is how to manage all vendor training. What often operationally happens is that supervisors are trained and are expected to relay the training to their teams. There are many cultures / languages, etc. involved in each phase up to and including final commissioning. Often turnarounds in workforce / change out of teams, aside from information not being transferred correctly via.
can't see the questions now. Oh yeah.
Unsure if there's anything to add to that, Paul, or anything to comment. If not, I'll keep moving. And then Michael also put, what are the data center specific electrical safety issues?
Well, it's quite a lot. I mean, a lot of them form part of this, so I think we covered a lot in the conference. We can probably bring that out a bit maybe in one of the future sessions. It's so one of the big things was around construction. So the key points in that, like arc flash, especially on first energization, hence why we've looked at the that commissioning process as part of it. So definitely that and where I suppose where we deviate from standards, because most of the standards are quite good, quite watertight. So where those deviations come in. And then obviously that management of contractors, competencies of persons, that's what forms all these work streams essentially, Mike. All those things that were discussed as the biggest specific electrical safety risks, they all kind of form into these work streams that we've established. So work stream 1 to 4, which are quite wide, but they're all based on those initial risks that we would talk through at the conference, essentially. Matt's got his hand up there.
Yeah, I was just going to expand on specifically to data centers. As someone who has gone through different industries, from utilities to manufacturing to data center construction, one of the things I've found that it's going to be tough to come through is this is the highest concentration of electrical energy, the quickest it's being built than anything before. So the electrical safety hazards, it's one of the reasons that I kind of joined in with this is I think there's a lot of value in probably establishing a much better baseline at the start, because this is a mental model shift from construction of the past where you kind of waited till you got to energizing a switchgear, and that was the only switchgear for the site. And now you have 100 to 150 switchgear and HPUs connected to it, and so it's just a much more dynamic mental model because along with this, and we haven't even discussed it, is the expansion that you'll see more in ops, but human performance tools along with the electrical safety training and establishing, like back to vendors. It's not just the training, it's making sure they check in daily to ensure that you know where your vendors are at all times. That's one of the things I found that gets a little harder and harder as we expand on the builds. But I think we are on a good path.
Yeah, was there anything else in there, Ben, that's popped up?
Just one more thing from Michael. Are you finding data centers not allowing generator service vendors not being permitted to place safety locks on equipment? No, I don't believe so. Matt's shaking his head. And then apart from that, there's nothing else that's coming down.
Are we talking about equipment isolation or being able to put personal locks to protect themselves once isolated?
If easier, Matt, it might be
Okay.
Michael, it might be
Yeah.
easier to just rejoin the call if you've got a few questions.
Yes. We have no issue with generator services putting their own locks on stuff to work on things. So that may be a issue that needs to be resolved. No one should be working on anything if they don't have protection for themselves.
Perfect.
One more just come through from Kelly. A big risk is sites actually not using the PTW and isolation certificates. This happens a lot more than people realize. As mentioned, capturing change, particularly if nothing is documented, is a risk.
Oh yeah, it's a really good statement. It's nothing really to add. It's
And
yeah.
I think that's everything, but we're pretty much up to time now anyway.
No, that's perfect. Well, like we say, we're gonna thanks everyone for coming. We'll share the questionnaire afterwards. Totally, I want to promote the participation and collaboration. So if anyone's got anything, put it in there, and we'll look forward to next month.
Yep, thank you for joining, everyone. As Dan mentioned, please fill in the survey. It lets us know how we can improve, any particular bits that you would like to share or any insights. And we look forward to sharing the recording out with other bits, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. I'll close the call now.